All right, everybody. One quick housekeeping item here. Alex Oppel, if you're still here, Alex, just come find me. I got something for you. Our last research presenter, Alex Oppel, just come find me if you're still here. So closing out our program today is our panel discussion on rules changes. You might have heard a couple of things about those. Our panelists today are Dallas Braden, former Oakland A's pitcher and current NBC Bay Area analyst, Kyle Glaser, national writer for Baseball America, and Bobby L. Scales II, former Chicago Cub and vice president baseball at Sports Info Solutions. And our moderator is Rob Maines, writer for Baseball Prospectus.
Okay, I have to move this down a little bit. Thanks. I'm personally really looking forward to this. I think that we're seeing this season the most momentous package of changes to the rules of baseball. Probably 50 years when we got the DH and the AL, maybe 54 when we had all the 1969 rule changes and we split into divisions. So let's get right into what we're seeing. The first thing I want to talk about with our panelists is the pitch clock. Obviously, this is a rule that has been on the books for a long time, but hasn't been enforced till this season. And it's been pointed out that while this is new to MLB, we've seen this promulgated through the minors, and a lot of guys have come up through the minors. A lot of umpires come up to the minors. Even major league players who've had rehab assignments have seen this before. So I wanted to ask our panelists, do you think that the veteran MLB players, as the season rolls out, are going to have more of a problem adjusting to this, or will the growing pains be kind of evenly spread among everybody on team rosters? And why don't we start with Dallas?
These are elite level movers and shakers. We're talking about guys who, at the beginning of a bullpen, will not know how to throw a certain pitch, and by the end of that bullpen, will feel confident enough to take that pitch with them out into a game and get outs. They are elite adjusters. There is not going to be an issue at all, in my opinion. And talking to the veterans, they understand now it's just about getting it and going a little quick. They simplify things to make a very difficult game as easy as possible. Having a game plan is not going to be anything new to them. Going out and wanting to shove the baseball down somebody's throat is not going to be anything new to them. We just now got to do it in a timely fashion. No problem.
Okay. Kyle, you've seen it in the minors.
Yeah, to echo Dallas's point, these guys are elite at adjusting and making adjustments, and I don't think we'll see that much of an issue. One of the things to keep in mind is there has been a different version, or some version of the pitch clock in the minors since 2015. 2015 is when Major League Baseball first put a 20-second pitch clock in at AA and AAA. You have a pretty substantial subset of guys who have come up through the minors for the better part of 8 years now, who have some familiarity with the pitch clock at some level. So it's not going to be that foreign of a concept for a lot of the guys in the league. And then in terms of adjusting to the season, what we can see consistently with the current iteration of pitch clock rules, in which you have to set off or else you get called for off potentially. The first 6 weeks of the season, there's an adjustment period. You see more violations, you see more automatic balls, automatic strikes, clock violations, etc. But after about 6 weeks, everyone kind of settles in, and you see that with the number of violations. Like we Major Baseball put out about 1.73 per game early in the season. By the end of the year, it's something like 0.2 or 0.3. It's very, very low. So again, guys in low A, high A can adjust and have adjusted. I fully expect major leaguers will adjust too, even if things potentially are a little rocky early. By first 6 weeks or so, it should be pretty smooth.
Now, Bobby, I want to build on something Kyle just said about this 6-week kind of adjustment period. We started seeing this in games in February. By the time the regular season begins, do you think that we'll be past a lot of the growing pains that Kyle described?
Yeah, I do. I think we'll be past a great deal of them. As Dallas said, both pitchers and hitters, you get to that level, even not even the major leagues, but even you get to a AA level, you're talking about elite level people, right? Elite level athletes, athletes that are able to adjust and change at a moment's notice. So, major league athletes, major league caliber players won't have an issue with it. And I don't think there'll be any lasting adjustment problems, yeah, you're going to have the odd irritation. You're going to have somebody called out on a third strike, and there's going to be, there's going to be an ejection. There's going to be that kind of stuff. There's going to be uproars in the media, but I think those are going to be few and far between. And once we get to mid-season, I think it's going to be a non-issue.
Just to put a bow on it, the last time that Matt Scherzer took the baseball, or the first time he took the baseball this spring, we saw him already figuring out how he was going to use the clock to his advantage.
100%.
Right.
A game.
Right.
New game.
Right.
It was-
And you'll remember Scherzer at one point was one of the biggest proponents of the pitch clock. You remember there was something he talked about, he didn't want it. And now he's one of the biggest proponents and figuring it out.
Building on that observation, one of the things that I've been wondering about with all these rules is these are guys who know baseball better than anyone else. And I'm wondering whether we're going to start to see, for lack of a better term, kind of workarounds. Are we going to see late in innings when you might have a tired starting pitcher, foul ball goes into the stands. It might take a little longer for the fielder who ran out there to get back to position. Is there going to be, are we going to see a lot more guys getting dirt in their eyes? Or do you think that we're just going to see the game played the way we're used to seeing it, just, at a little bit more brisk pace? What do you think, Dallas?
Well, don't sleep on it. There's still a human element here. The clock starts by somebody pushing. And they are prompted by the human being behind home plate. Here we go. That's what you get. Clock starts. So if one boy down the right field line is not where it needs to be, don't matter. And that human up top is going to get it going. And so the workaround is going to be, you're not allowed to do this, but I believe that the game ebbs and flows and the situation when it arises, I think you're going to see a collective understanding between the individuals who are policing the game, the umpires, the players, because the conversation is about what happens in high-level situations. And we are taught, and have been taught our entire lives, to slow these moments down. And so understanding all of that, from the umpire to the performer, I think there's going to be a collective wink, wink, nod, nod before we get it going.
I completely agree with you. And I think one of those things that, Dallas talks about is it's even now when you can't have catchers go to the mound, say umpire gets dinged or, foul tip into his mask. Guys are figuring out ways to give the umpire, or even if it's a catcher who gets dinged on a foul ball or something, there's little ways that it's been understood that we're going to give this guy a break until let him gather himself. And at that point, we'll resume the game. It's the same little nuance there. There's going to be little things that the brotherhood understands about each other, right? And, the game will be played at the appropriate pace. It will be faster than we've seen before, but it will be played at the appropriate pace. And I think that's the correct way to go about it.
Speaking in terms of what we saw in the minors, especially with the current version of the pitch clock rules and everything related, like both Bobby and Dallas have said, of course, there's moments where, maybe a guy is, a little slow getting back to his position, or there is absolutely an element of gamesmanship you'll see even in low A, high A, double A. But even with that, even with those little moments, you still saw a much faster pace. I don't think, the moments here or there where maybe they do slow things down, or there is that understanding, it's going to completely eradicate the benefits of a pitch clock. And just instead of it being 25 minutes shorter, it might be 22 minutes shorter. So I think ultimately, whatever, gamesmanship takes place, I don't think it'll make a significant difference. I think we will still see significantly shorter game times and better pace on the whole.
Right. Now, one of the things that Baseball America found was that, take a step back, one of the things that we found at Baseball Prospectus is that the more time a pitcher has between pitches, the harder he can throw, that it's positively correlated with velocity. One of the things that BA found, though, is that with the pitch clock, velocity in the minor leagues didn't really decline. And I'm wondering whether that suggests that that extra rest wasn't really necessary, or are we potentially putting pitchers' arms at risk by giving them less time between pitches? And I'll start with you, Kyle, since you were with there, but I'm really interested to hear what Dallas thinks about this.
Yeah, I mean, it's only a 1 year sample in terms of the pitch clock being throughout every level of the minors, but there was no finding of any higher rate of injuries with the pitch clock than without it. So again, it's only 1 year. We need to see what it looks like over multiple years, and maybe over time we will see a difference. But generally speaking, all of the worst case scenarios that people have put out there in terms of, pitcher health, pitcher fatigue, how's this going to affect them, have not come to pass. Again, the pitch clock was in the low A Cal League in 2021. Being in Southern California, a lot of those games, I was watching it closely, and it really wasn't any different in terms of the crispness of the stuff, the break. These are younger kids who get fatigued earlier anyway, but going deeper in games, it didn't really make a significant difference in any of them. So I think a lot of the worst case scenario fears people have so far, the data does not back them up as being a real threat. But again, it's only been a year or two, so it might take longer for it to show.
Small sample size, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think it's something that we're going to see these guys again in terms of adjusting to having to perform under duress. It's something that they do very well. So physically, I don't see any major setbacks occurring. I think, if I'm being honest, a majority of the walking around is gathering yourself, and whether you hit a 20-second mark, I mean, unless we're talking about moving heavy weight, are we talking about multiple minutes worth of rest, really creating more of an impact to execute a rep than we are a matter of 3 seconds as opposed to 5 seconds, which is 2 extra seconds before I throw, my 84, their 98. So yeah, I don't think that we're going to see any sort of major glaring, aha, this is what it was. The pitch clock got him. Like, we know that injury. It's the pitch clock. Look, but I'm not a scientist. You guys are the nerds.
On the topic of the idea that, you need the time to kind of get your head together, batters have less time than do pitchers under the new rules. Bobby, you've been a major league batter. How do you think that the shortened time could affect hitters?
Well, I don't think, again, you're still talking about highly finely tuned athletes, right? And I don't know that that's going to make a big adjustment. I think we have created, I say we, position players have created these routines in part because of things we've done our entire careers, and in part because of some of the tools that the mental skills in the sports in the performance guys have given us to do between reps, so to speak, right? Well, it's really easy to retrain that. And you talk about guys being able to make an adjustment. We just train differently. Okay. So instead of walking down adjusting my batting gloves, looking at the foul pole as my reset, I'm just going to do that sooner. I'm just going to do that quicker and create a new routine. It's almost like shooting a free throw. When I was in high school, 4 dribbles, rotate, shoot it. Well, now I got 2 dribbles, rotate, shoot it. I mean, this is not really difficult stuff to do. You just have to plan for it, account for it. Once you get used to it, it's going to be a non-issue.
And I always use Marcus Semien as the prime example for how to adjust, because there was a game 3 years ago against Marcus Stroman, and we know how Stro likes to shimmy. I love it. I love every minute of it. Marcus Semien did not like any minutes of it, not 1 second of it. And so there was some jawing back and forth, and Semien wasn't ready. Umpire did not grant him timeout. Yeah. Semien was like, you know what? Never again. So he stepped out, stepped in, and from that moment on, in the middle of that at bat, Marcus Semien decided to change things up. And you watch him take his at bats now. Nay, nan, ever, not one for a minute does he step out with 2 feet. Ain't happening.
In Dallas, not to mention, like, this stuff is not necessarily new.
No.
I mean, player development departments have been playing with, using a clock to enhance and to speed up play. I know when I was in Pittsburgh a few years back, I mean, we brought out I think we put 18 seconds on the clock. We didn't know. We knew changes were coming. We didn't know what they were going to look like, but we just arbitrarily decided we're going to put 18 seconds on the clock. Then we took it down to 13 and just did it. And this was before any of the measures were really fully into play. And so you can train these things. These things are not difficult to execute in the moment. They're not difficult to train. And especially when you get guys with a high level of intelligence who are highly, adaptable athletes, it took one at bat. It took in at bat, right, to make that adjustment.
And I would just add as well, there's been a pitch clock at AA and AAA since 2015. You go back, Corey Seager was a prospect still in 2015.
That's right.
And now he's, a guy who's, approaching his 30s, got his big free agent contract. A significant chunk of the big leaguers have experience with this. I think because it's new at the major leagues, we're talking about it. Oh, what are these guys going to do? A significant chunk of the guys in the big leagues have had to deal with this. They've done it in the minors through AA, AAA, if they've been in the low A levels the last 2-3 years. So for a lot of these guys, it's not actually that new. It's more new for fans of the big leagues than it is the players who have actually been dealing with it for, in some cases, if you were drafted in 2017 or so,
You don't know any different.
Right. I mean, it's been your entire professional career. So it's not going to be that new for a significant portion of the big leaguers in the game today.
Right. Let's shift over to the shift. I think that those of us who have casual fans in our families probably heard more about the shift than any other thing that's in one of the rules, because, it looks weird. A guy gets a ground ball, in short right field. That doesn't really seem like baseball. And yet, Baseball America, I cribbed some other data from them this morning. AA batting average on balls in play, 309 in 2018, 305 in 2019, when with the shift ban in 2021 went up to only 308, less than it had been before. It seems like the impact of this might be less than what people might expect, and Kyle is nodding. So why don't you elaborate?
Yeah, this has been my baby. I've researched this extensively, written a couple articles about it, and consistently, there has been no material or significant difference in batting average on balls in play since the shift was introduced in the minor leagues. As Rob mentioned, 2021, they introduced a couple different versions of a shift, first half, second half. Batting averages on balls in play were what they were without a shift ban. They tried it in the Arizona Fall League. After the year, batting average on balls in play was literally the exact same as it was 4 or 5 years earlier with no shift restrictions. Last year, they expanded it across to low A, high A, AA. AA batting average on balls in play went up 3 points. So, very minor, nothing without that's not in the normal range of variance. Batting average on balls in play actually went down in low A and high A after they banned the shift. So I think there's been this idea that banning the shift is this panacea. It's going to create so many more hits, especially for left-handed batters. That has not borne itself out in the minors at really any level. The one caveat is shifting is less frequent in the minors than the majors. So there is a chance maybe it could have a greater effect. But I did think it was interesting that all the rules changes Major League Baseball put in place, there was hard data supporting it based on what happened in the minors, except for this one. This one pretty consistently showed there wasn't actually any significant difference on batting average and balls in play by banning the shift.
Dallas, you've seen major league pitchers who have not liked the shift. You've seen ones who do like the shift. Do you see at the MLB level anything that you think is going to be significantly different?
As of right now, it's funny because the conversation's being had, and it's, there's a humor to it. Is you throw the pitch and you look back and there's a guy that's there, to the point where we've been trained to throw a pitch and get out of there, right? Don't knock it down. We got a dude camped at second base. He's just going to step on the bag. That's don't screw it up. So I'm very interested to see if specifically it's the power left-handers that experience the bump or the rub, if you will. And you said something interesting that kind of caught my ear. AA is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, widely regarded and widely renowned as the prospect league. This is the prospect level. This is where you could get the call from AA. It's happened. Is there anything to those guys and the statistics, their ability to put the bat on the ball at a greater rate, exit velocities, the inability to move around that plays into the numbers that you receive? Because we know that there's a variance in performance, AAA, low A, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And again, I think that's something where there are all sorts of potential lurking variables that maybe we're not considering. Causation is not correlation is not causation necessarily, but I think what we have seen is, and talking to AA managers, because I asked them this specifically, hey, why do you think there wasn't any real difference 2 years in a row? And they talked about, they thought that it kind of just canceled each other out. The balls that would have been hits, but were turned into outs with a shift, they were kind of evening out with the balls that now that there wasn't a shift, that before, maybe that's a dribbler down the third base line, it's a hit. Well, now it's an out. It all kind of evened it out and canceled itself out. So that was the opinion of AA managers. Again, the big caveat behind all this is shifting occurs less frequently in the minors than the majors. So there is a possibility that because of that, we will see a greater effect in the majors, but just based off the conversations, based off the data, there really was not a significant difference in the minors.
Bobby, nobody has covered this shift the way that SIS has. It's been my source of data for it for years. What we're talking about here is banning the infield shift.
Right.
We're not talking about what could happen in the outfield. What do you think we could see in terms of effectively two-man outfielders where you've got an outfielder?
Well, you've seen it. I mean, you've seen teams that have done it in spring training. I think Gallo the Red Sox did it to Gallo the other day. It's going to happen, right? Now, here's the thing with it. So there's two pieces. Number one, MLB has come out and said they're not going to disallow that formation. They're only going to not allow the infielder to be back off the grass and then more than two people on the same side of the infield. So in theory, if you want to place your left fielder in that triangle, you can do that. Now, the thing is, are you going to construct your lineup such that you have a guy that if you're playing Philly, right, and you've got Harper, I know he's hurt, but if you've got Harper, you've got Schwarber hitting back to back in the order, are you going to play a left fielder that's going to be able to go over there 3 or 4 times a night or 8 times a night because of the two players? Are you going to construct your lineup that way? I'm not going to give up what I can have potentially offensively for potentially 8 at-bats when those guys are trying to go to the house anyway. I'm playing for a mishit ball, essentially, right? So I think yes, you're going to see it. Major League Baseball said they're not going to ban that kind of formation. It's going to be interesting for me to see when and how these teams deploy that.
Something that I've thought about is, am I going to see my left-handed brethren cut out of this thing slowly but surely? Because do you want your left fielder who might be left-handed fielding that ball in shallow right? You want him making that play? Grady ranged to his right and gathered the ball, and he's now got to pivot, turn, make a throw. Does that have any impact on who we're moving around? I would have to think that has an impact. If I've got a right fielder and I got a left fielder and one's right-handed and one's left-handed, well, lefty, get on out there. Righty, come on in here. But you've got to have people that can adapt in that situation. And I don't know how big of an impact that's going to have on roster construction or viability, but something I thought.
And that's the thing for me is roster construction, depending on what you're, and even if you want to go deeper, if you look at the fact that if you're in a division to have a bunch of left-handed hitters, well, you only play them 13 times this year as opposed to 19. So am I really going to construct my roster around, a few times where I may have to move a guy to this particular location, but I can't move my infielders and I can only move a right-handed left fielder? I'm not going to do that. So it's going to be really interesting to see what teams do.
Right. Let's talk about the disengagement rule, which I think has the potential to change the game more than any of the ones we've talked about so far. There's been a 50% increase in stolen base attempts per game so far this spring training. That's per Jeff Passan. I don't know personally how much of this we're going to see in the regular season spillover, but there's kind of two ways to look at it: from the pitcher's perspective, from the base runner's perspective. Dallas, pitcher, what do you think?
Well, I'm extremely biased as a left-handed pitcher, and even more biased because my pickoff move was a snap move, step off. And I went through a full theatrical routine picking people off. There was ball in my hand, pump fake before I've even stepped in the rubber. Runner dives back. I'm engaged. I've got my sign. What happens then? The hitter has to call timeout because his boy at first is laying in the dirt. Timeout. I love that because he just had to burn his timeout. I'm good with that. I've got one more left. I've actually got 2 more left, and I'm going to get you one out of those 2 times. But now I don't even have the opportunity to do that. I can't even start my tired act out there.
And
Right.
that's awesome.
And that's exactly where he comes into play, is now he starts to get a little braver. He starts to get a little further out there, and he might be baiting me, thinking, you know what, if I can put the pressure on him, he's going to have to tuck that third time over. He's going to have to tuck that in his back pocket. He doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want me standing on second base. And now that cat and mouse, that's detracting from my attention on where business needs to be handled, which is at home plate. So not having the ability for me personally, because the one good thing I did in baseball, the one thing I was proud of was some folks talk about controlling the running game, and I thought that was really cute. I eliminated it. You're not going anywhere. And so not being able to do that or carry that arrow in my quiver out there with me would irritate me. But again, I find different ways, slide step, 1-1, sub 1, you're not going anywhere. But the cat and mouse now, watching how they are trying to set guys up and bait, one-way lead, two-way lead, whether or not they're giving anything away. I just spent 2 weeks in minor league camp, and I spent 2.5 days with the left-handers breaking it down. When Bobby gets on first, this is what we're looking for.
Well, okay, so here's the thing, right? So this is going to, and tell me if you disagree. I think this is going to more adversely affect the right-handed pitcher than is a lefty.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is because the lefty's looking at you anyway. And the interesting thing, and so, one of my many hats I wore for a while when I was with Pittsburgh is I was the base running instructor in the minor leagues. And if you look at some of the numbers, the caught stealing rate with right and left-handed pitchers on the mound is virtually the same. Clearly, the attempts rate is way down. And that was one of my things I always told my guys running in the Pittsburgh system is, why are we so afraid against lefties? Because very few lefties have good moves. They either have outstanding moves or they don't, right? And so one of the things that's always baffled me about this thing is that I don't understand why the stolen base went away. I understand why the stolen base went away. Like, I get it from a numerical perspective and not making outs on the base pass perspective. And if you're going to make an out, let's make an out from the dish, right? But base running, stealing bases virtually stopped. You just heard the lengths that he would go to make sure that nobody got that extra 90. He's a 1%er. Most of the guys didn't care. And if they did care, they weren't able to deliver a quality pitch to the plate. You got stuff in the middle of the plate, and it helps everybody in the lineup. No one will ever prove to me, and I love everybody in here, there's no number that can ever be proven to me that can make me understand why the industry basically stopped running. I never got it. So anything we can do in the game to get guys running again, because it absolutely has an effect on the pitchers. Pitchers won't tell you while they're playing that it bothered them. The second they get done playing, God, I hated traffic out there. Oh, I hate it when guys ran. I hate it when they were over there. I'm right-handed. 90% of the right-handed pitchers can't see you, right? But we stopped running as an industry. And I looked at this the other day. It's not the top of the food chain. It's not the guys who are first and second in stolen bases year over year. I mean, that number went down too. It was, I think, 49, or one year, like 40 stolen bases led the league. But it's at the bottom. There's years where 20, 25 were in the top 10. Whereas just 7-8 years ago, I looked and it was three straight years where 39, 39, and 41 was the bottom. That was number 10. Okay. I don't understand what it does to pitchers. Why we essentially the industry stopped running. I'll get off my soapbox now.
No,
Let me
I agree
just add
100%.
that the SIS Baseball Podcast, which is a great podcast, Bobby gave one of the most informative lectures I've ever heard on base running. If you haven't heard it, you really should listen to it.
Listen to us, please listen to us. Thank you.
Kyle, you've seen this in action. What do you think we're going to see at the major league level from base runners?
everything's going to go up again, based on what we saw in the minors. It was an average of about one additional steal attempt every other game. It went up a little bit last year. Success rates jumped from about 68% to 77%. And to Bobby's point, which by the way, I agree with 100%, everything you said, within major league front offices, there was this idea that 75% is the magic number. If we can't be successful 75% of the time, it doesn't make sense to steal. What we saw, the stolen base success rates go from about 68, 69% at each level to 77% around there for most levels after this rule is put in place. So now you've crossed that 75% threshold. And so for a lot of front offices now, it's going to start making sense to run. That's going to filter down to the coaching staffs. Hey, we want to start running more. Coaches are going to employ that on their players more. Bobby talked about the stolen base numbers going down. It was only 2009. Jacoby Ellsbury led the majors with 70 steals. Last year, John Birdie led with 41 steals.
And to that point, the bottom, we always look at the top. I looked at the bottom. That year, Jacoby had 70 plus steals. The 10th guy was, I think, at 41. That was 10. John Birdie led the league with what last year?
41.
There you go.
And we saw, if you get a chance, look up Fangraphs minor league leaderboards for last year. I mean, Anthony Volpe had 51 stolen bases. He's not even in the top 10. He's somewhere in the teens. So I figure it's 50 or 51. But the point is, we are seeing it more in the minors. I do think it will filter up to the majors, whether it's, to the same degree, we'll see. But it was pretty apparent just seeing how much bolder base runners were, how much more encouraged they were to run. And truthfully, it did make for a more exciting brand of baseball. And I think we'll see that encouragement just continue to reinforce itself as we have more and more years of this.
And we're talking about disengagements, right? The biggest weapon a right-handed pitcher has on a base runner, particularly at first base, is to simply hold the baseball. If you train holding the baseball for 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, and then delivering the ball to the plate and being able to execute a pitcher strike, you will shut down the running game, because the variance of timing going home, whether it's 4, whether it's 1001, 1002, whether it's 1000 go, if you can do that and execute a pitch, that guy at first base has no chance.
And not only that, but the downtime or perceived downtime when the ball's being held, that's a twofold operation, two fronts for me. I'm messing with him at first and the guy at home plate, because he's expecting a leg lift, maybe not. Maybe he's expecting a slide step. Maybe he thinks he's got something on me. But every minute he's looking for something to cue off of timing wise. And if I can disrupt that, I'm that much closer to getting him out. And just to put a bow on how it affects pitching as well, what this clock, I think, could also see is turning pitchers into fastball salesmen. I'm going to have to give you the heater because I'm going to bury this and you're gone. Now I'm limited and I don't need you on second. I got to give you the heater. So now you start talking about a lineup with guys on base learning how to manipulate sequencing, buying yourselves fastballs, forcing the hitter or forcing the pitcher to give in before he wants to.
Okay. I think that I can see we've got a lot of questions in the queue from people that are watching us on Zoom. I'm sure we're going to have a lot here. So I'm going to do just real quickly, kind of lightning round for everybody. Of the rule, we know about the rule changes we've got. If you could add one rule change for, I guess, 2024 now, what would it be? And anybody can go first. Or if you want to think, I'll give you mine. Because I've given up, we're never going to get rid of the zombie runner. I would say reduce the size of pitching staffs from 13, where the cap is now, to 12. And just a stat I looked up over lunch. Dallas, 2010. 5 complete games. There were 28 teams in 2023 that had fewer.
Sorry about it.
Mine, I'll say this. Mine is I do not understand why we play with one set of rules all year long. And then when it's winning time and it's money time and it's rings, we change the rules. I don't get it. No one will ever make me understand it. The zombie runner goes away. which I'm okay with. I did play 2 years in Japan where you have, you can end in a tie. I would probably like a hybrid of both of those where let's get to 13 and then we put the runner on second. I think that's the best of both worlds. I'm not a huge fan of the tie, but I got a playoff share in Japan because we tied a baseball game and we made to the playoffs. So I think I'm probably a bigger fan of the tie than I probably should be a bigger fan of it, but that's mine. Standardize the rules, play with them all year, and hybrid ending.
Not particularly creative, but I agree. I think my biggest thing would be getting rid of the zombie runner in extra innings. Maybe they do it in the 12th, the 13th, but to start with it right away in the 10th, I would change that. At the very least, push it back to, like Bobby said, the 12th or 13th or so.
Just to answer it, Bobby, you know the answer. You know why we play a certain way, and then when it all counts, we play a different way. Because that's the real brand of baseball that we all want to see, that we're used to. That's why it is what it is.
No doubt.
I would love to see, and maybe this is me being like super old school about things, but you got a 40-man roster come September. Why am I being punished for cultivating talent? Why am I being told that you've put in a lot of great work all season long? You get to reward 3 guys?
Yeah,
Isn't it 2 now?
it's 2.
It's 2. You get 2.
Yeah, 2.
2 guys. You start with 26, and at the end of it, when it's all said and done, 28. What I'm getting at is organizations who have the depth and put the resources into forming talent, creating formidable talent to the point where they can come up in August and impact a race, September, impact a race, potentially October, impact a race. I'm being punished for that? I thought that's what this was all about, was creating talent, cultivating talent, growing this game, giving you fans the best possible product I can possibly deliver. But now I got a cap on that. Why? It's tired.
But Buck Showalter, I thought, had a really interesting solution because there was a point where all 40 guys were on the roster and you just had this reliever parade in September.
She's in all 40 of them.
Right. Well, but what I thought was interesting, he made the point that allow all, carry a full 40, but designate 25 active guys for a series. And that way, the guys who have had really good years get rewarded with the big league call up, get the money, which for a lot of guys who are stuck in AAA can be significant, make a significant difference in their lives. Plus that reward of getting to the big leagues. But you also then don't have the, hey, we're rolling out 12, 13 pitchers a game, like some of those really long September games were. I think that's a great solution, is bring up the full 40, but have 25 active per series.
Again, you can designate who you want. You can, but I think you would have to do this. You'd have to specify amount of pitchers and position players.
Well, with the clock now and the invention of the limited reliever removal, right? You got to face 3-batter minimum. Would that have enough of an impact where we wouldn't see those egregious games and the changes and, Buck running out the lefty, he gets the job done or doesn't. Here comes the righty. Well, there's a lefty behind him. Here comes, that's gone because Buck would do that. We know Buck would do that. So again, small sample size, right? Small sample size.
I know I did see Brad Osmus somehow managed to do it in 2019 with the Angels, where somehow despite a 3-batter minimum, we still ended up with an obscene amount of pitchers in a game that went almost 4 hours.
Okay, I think we're going to move to questions. What I'd ask is that if you have a question, please come to the microphone and speak into it. I'm going to start with one that we got over the internet that I think is interesting. Dallas, as a broadcaster, how do you expect to adjust to the different cadence of the pitch clock to throw in some Vince Scully story time?
Well, first of all, I am no Vin Scully. Let's start there. Secondly, what he was a master at is weaving in and out, right? And that's now what has to happen. Just like Bobby talked about, instead of 2 dribbles and a rotation, or instead of 4, it's now 2 and a spin. And we go. So that's really, I think, going to be the only difference, is figuring out when to get in, when to get out quickly, maybe truncating that story, kind of giving you the spark notes. And then here's the pitch and the 2-1.
It's great. I feel like this was sort of half addressed already, which is, first of all, full disclosure, I'm not a fan of any of the rule changes, and I'll just leave it at that. So if it comes off in the question. One of the things that strikes me with particularly the disengagement rule and the pitch clock is that they're just a bad combination. So I could like the idea of having limited disengagements plus a pitch clock gets rid of the cat and mouse game that you were talking about. And so I'm wondering your thoughts as to if you had to use one or the other, how you would go, and if that seems like a reasonable, like when there's a runner on base, if you're already stuck with disengagements, do you get rid of the pitch clock, or do you get unlimited disengagements, but the pitch clock still exists, which is, I don't know. I mean, I think I prefer the former, but I don't like either option. So I guess I'm curious, because it feels like the combination is just a bad idea, particularly because you can't think anymore.
So the background on this is I mentioned they put a pitch clock in AAA and AA in 2015. And what they found, there was no limit on the number of times you can disengage from the rubber. So what was happening was pitchers were stepping off as much as they wanted and resetting the clock. So even though you had a pitch clock, games were not actually being shortened. The reason made people think about the disengagement in terms of stolen bases. The primary reason Major League Baseball put a limit on the number of times you can disengage from the rubber in 2021 in the Cal League was because a pitch clock wasn't shortening games in AA and AAA. You had to have a limit on the number of times a pitcher could step off in order for the pitch clock to have any effect. Otherwise, I mean, guys were stepping off as much as they wanted, resetting it, and it wasn't really doing anything. So if anything, it's actually kind of the opposite. The two have to be tied together. If you get rid of the disengagement rule, the pitch clock loses its teeth and games are as long as they were, which is what we saw happen at AA and AAA for the better part of the 5 seasons.
Which speaks exactly to what Dallas talked about earlier. Guys are going to figure out a way to game the system. They're going to. We're going to see some more gamification of it. I would imagine there's going to be some tweak to it next year.
And with that, they have tweaked it pretty consistently. It said it was 2015 AAA was 20 seconds all the way around. 2018, they made it 15 with no one on, 20 with runners on. When we went to the Cal League, it was 15 and 17. Last year, when they expanded, it was 14 to 18. So I will say Major League Baseball has shown itself to be flexible and adaptable, take feedback. And you're right, Bobby. I do think after this first year, we will see some sort of tweak. Maybe it's a second here, second there, or something, because this is a rule that has been ever evolving since Major League Baseball first put it in the minors in 2015.
Kyle, I got a question here that I think would be good for you. And I think I know what the answer is. Any updated thoughts given how much BABIP is up so far this spring?
Yeah, so I think it's always important to take spring training numbers with a grain of salt, because you're seeing guys with all different levels of ability. You have guys who have barely pitched in AA facing big leaguers, or you mentioned stolen bases being up in spring training. Well, if you look back historically, the number of stolen bases in spring training are always higher than they are in the regular season. So I hesitate to go too crazy over spring training numbers in either direction. To me, I look more at what happened over full regular seasons, and in some cases, multiple regular seasons. To me, that's going to be a little more telling than 2 weeks of spring training games with disparate levels of talent.
Hey guys, my question is regarding the pitch clock. Do you guys think we'll see any type of leeway, maybe, later on in the season, or maybe toward the playoff? In football, they have the play clock that hits double zeros, and, they won't call the delay game. Do you think we'll see maybe, a second or two leeway, or do you think they'll be extremely strict with it throughout the season?
I think out of the gate, it's going to be the substitute teacher. It's going to be real strict, right? Like coming in hot, not playing any games. I think we kind of addressed this earlier. I think there's going to be a professional understanding in certain situations that will allow for some leeway, and possibly down the stretch. I mean, like I said, it's winning time. These are big games, big innings. It's not going to be large. You're going to see somewhere in September this year, down the stretch, somebody's a game behind chasing. You're going to see a punch out with a guy on 3rd and 2 outs. Just to remind people, someone's going to get ejected and all that other good stuff that goes with it. But then what you're going to see is instant correction, and people will get back towards the norm. And here's why. Why are these things in play?
To speed up the game,
Speed, why?
to get viewership up and just the
What,
overall
what comes with viewers?
money. Yep.
I'm a huge soccer fan too. I listen to Sirius XM soccer sometimes in the morning, and there's guys on there, and guy always says, "Why do these things happen?" And the guy says, "Follow the money, you morons." It's not a big secret. So yeah, you're gonna see a big situation that someone gets a strike, someone gets a big ball, or someone's gonna get punched out with a guy on third, 2 outs, and then you'll see the instant correction.
Here's the reason you saw the spring training game end the way it did. This will happen. Take note, but it had to happen now, to his point. So the message is sent right now. And then eventually there's going to be that lull. And like you said, there will be that pop of the collar. Remember, we're on a clock, people.
We're still here.
Thank you.
Hey, how you doing? To me, obviously you pointed out like most of the rule changes are for fan consumption. But as a former player, what do you guys think about just the change in how the game is being played? You talked about the lack of stolen bases. We talked about, just some different things about how guys are playing the game. Do we think that there's anything that correlates from player development and teaching players to play the game, going back to that maybe original style? There's more of a stolen base, there's more balls put in play, guys trying to run instead of the more entertaining thing, or we think is more entertaining, which is the home run and guys swinging for the fence, and there's less balls put in play. My question is, because to me, most of the rule changes are, that are effective or that need to happen are more live ball things. When I played, when guys put the ball in play more, it felt like the game went by faster.
Yeah.
And so, with guys putting the ball in play less now, do we think that there's any effect? And maybe we could do something on the player development side to increase fan consumption and speeding the game up as well, not just rule changes.
In my opinion, no. It starts with compensation, ends with compensation. You tell me what's going to get me paid, how I'm going to feed my family. I'll train to do that.
That's it.
And right now it's 200, but I can pop you 35 and 85. I got a job. Why do you want me hitting 280, bro?
Right. That's my thing. Yeah.
Come on. So 280, come on. No, I feed my family with 235.
So do you think that the way baseball games are won now, is it different than it was back then? Or does it need to be different? Rather, does it need to be different? Do we need to be trying to hit the home run now? Or do we need to still go back to putting the ball in play more? Do you think that matters?
I mean, yeah, but I hate to just be redundant with the answer, but it truly does. If you listen to the players, you listen to guys like Lindor was the first guy when we started talking about the shift. Yo, let me eat.
Right.
Let me be me. Let me range. Let me hose. Let me be an athlete. Let me show you what we're capable of. I mean, we are in the prime of athleticism in this game. The prime. Like Mike Trout 6 years ago, freak. Right now, Mike Trout, don't know he makes my top 10 of athletes in this game.
Right.
When you just talk about raw athleticism, freakish type skill.
Right.
So until those guys start getting paid to hit behind runners like they used to,
100%.
move the ball around, until they start getting rewarded to do that financially, you're not going to talk them into doing it.
I think my last point, again, just being a newer generation player, coming from showcase baseball, I think that to me is a more contributor of that. And how guys play the game they play now is because there's no more practice. There's no more guys being taught the game and how to play the game the correct way. I remember getting to rookie ball and my rookie ball manager telling me, hey guys, like we're taking infield and outfield like it's perfect game. Like it's a showcase and not like we're trying to play the game. So, I'm not going back and forth. I just.
Oh, no, I appreciate this. You got to be able to have these kind of back and forth and conversations. This is how we learn, man. And Bobby can speak to this more than I can, but I know about this for a fact. There's organizations that don't even send scouts out to see certain guys in certain spots because the data is already there. Not only is it already there, they've got a lineage of data from when you were 17, heaving it up at the PG Classic. I know this kid. I've got video on this kid. I can hammer a bag of Cheetos and 40 right-handers in an hour.
That's right.
Why you got me on an airplane? For what?
It saves money. Yeah. No. So, I think there's two sides of this piece, right? And it's unfortunate because at heart, I'm a purist.
Right.
One of the things that I believed in when I was director of player development for the Angels, right when I stopped playing, and an old school cat told me this a long time ago. He goes, son, my job is to help you be the best baseball player, the most complete baseball player you can be with the ability that God gave you. That is my quest in life for you and all the guys I coach. Now, how noble is that? Real talk, how noble is that? The guy's really, he wants to get every bit out of me. It's not, it doesn't play because of everything Dallas said. And I'll give you this quick story. I won't tell you which spring training it was because it'll be a dead giveaway as to who I was working for at the time. But we sent some kids over. As you guys know, you'll see these games. You'll see the kids with 2 ear flaps and nothing on their back. Those are what you call the JICs, the just in case guys, right? You send them over. It's 15-5 at the end of the ball game. Every now and then what's going to happen is you're going to find one of those kids. It's going to be second and third, one out in the ninth. And, you know, it's winning time. So it gets fun, right? For those young men that send over. Okay. And it was a left-handed hitter, a kid who had hit 20 home runs in the league he was playing in the year before. All he's got to do is literally bunt a ball to the third base side. There's nobody over there. They're in a full shift. They're in a full shift for a kid who doesn't have a name on his back, but he's left-handed. And they saw that he hit 20 homers. So they just put everybody on the side. If he just bunts a ball, the team wins the game. So I got a scathing email about 4 minutes after the game ended and we had lost the game from my boss. I'm not going to tell you which one either, who said, do I need to start fining people for coming over and not playing winning baseball? So I walked to his office and I'm surprised I was still working there at the time. And those who know me and have worked with me probably believe this because I would do this. And I said, no, you don't have to fine them. But when you start paying them to win games like that, then you might get that result. And he looked at me like I was crazy and he didn't say anything, which is a key indicator of what? He knew I was right.
I will say, but I agree with everything Dallas and Bobby have said. I think if we do see any sort of change, there's going to be significant lag time. You know, some of these things that are just now taking root in low A, it will take multiple years before it really starts to gain traction in the major leagues and even when it just first starts showing up, it's going to be another few years until, this starts becoming prevalent. So I think if we do see a change in that strategy, it's not something that we're going to see, 2-3 years from now, hey, there's more hitting behind runners. Hey, there's more laying down bunts, in open spots. Hey, there's, all the, everything that we attribute as small ball. It's going to be longer. I think just watching how even low A, high A baseball has changed in 2021, 2020 compared to what it was 2016, 17, 18. These guys are being coached a little differently, be more aggressive on the bases, do things that maybe are more kind of small ballish because there is now a benefit to them. But at the end of the day, you still get promoted based on, how many bombs you're hitting. You still get promoted based on, your exit velocities, and your launch angles. That data is gonna be more important than, well, hey, I great situational read there and lay down a bunt to win us a game. So the incentives still have to be adjusted a little bit, and that's going to take time. But I will say we are starting to see some different coaching and different things being emphasized at the lowest levels in the minors. And it could get to the majors. It's going to be a while. I'm talking 8 years, 10 years.
And I'll say this, there was an inflection point a few years ago with a team specifically over a 3-year period where I really thought it was going to change. I truly did. That 14, 15, 16 Royals bunch.
Yeah. And he's trying to do it again.
Yep.
That 14, 15, 16. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and look. Put the computer up, watch the game.
Yeah. Yep.
I agree.
I was, again, so 13, 14, 15, I was a farm director in LA. We won the division in 14. In 15, we ended up getting beat by 2 or 3 or 4 games, but they came into our building in 14. We won the division. They come off that wild card win. And they came in earlier in that year, and we played great baseball a year, but they came in early and beat the brakes off us by running all over the map, catching stuff. Nori Aoki was hitting stuff like this, just chipping balls. Low Kane would pop one, Moustakas would pop one, but Dyson would lay a bunt down, still second and third. Then somebody would roll over a ground ball to second. They score. I was in the booth like, oh my God, can I cheer for these guys?
Yeah.
It was so, and then when they came to our place for the division series after they had won the wild cards, and they got off the bus. I never forget it. We were pre-advanced meeting. I saw them get off the bus. I said to myself, we in trouble this series, and they swept us. And they did it by being exactly that. by playing the old.
The Hosmer dash for home, come on.
They played a form of baseball we haven't seen. And I genuinely thought the game was going to switch back a little bit. And it hasn't. And we're in 28 years, we're in 23. We'll see.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So you mentioned revenue. Let's talk some serious business revenue and analytics, namely beer sales. It's a shorter game. They are definitely going to be down. Same for ad revenue. And I'm sure there's been backroom discussions about this. How are they going to deal with that revenue shortfall?
I think the ad revenue will go up because you're going to have shorter games. The problem they were having is you couldn't sell 7, 8, 9 when it was happening at 11:30 at night. Okay, so beer revenue, that's easy. Just lower the price. Tell them to double fist it on the way out.
And that's what the San Francisco Giants have done. They are the only Major League Baseball team offering you a single-digit dollar beer. $9. Go get your big beer. San
So am I
Francisco.
going to be paying $40 for a glass of beer next?
So
Inflation.
No, you're going to be paying 10, so go get 4.
So my editor, JJ Cooper, actually wrote a story on this. And again, minors are different than the majors, but he actually surveyed minor league team operators about did they see their concessions revenue go down with these shorter games in the pitch clock? And the answer was resoundingly no. And he was surprised and he dug into it a little more. And what he found is people are staying for 2.5 hours regardless. It's just now they're staying 2.5 hours and seeing the whole game versus staying 2.5 hours and leaving in the 7th inning. The amount of time they're in the park wasn't actually changing. The amount of time that they're going and buying concessions wasn't changing. They're just leaving when the game ended. So I actually, again, minors are different than majors. There's all different sorts of economic considerations. But again, what we thought the worst case scenario would be did not come to pass. And that has been a common theme through all these side effects, the rules changes. Will there be unintended consequences? Of course, they're inevitable, and we probably won't be able to predict them. That's true with any legislation. But I think all the fears that people have had, none of them have come to fruition. That is something we have taken note of and tried to write about at BA. And concession revenue is one of them that you're right, logically it would be. But what we found is, again, fans actually stay 2.5 hours regardless. It's just a matter of if they're leaving in the 7th or they're staying the whole game.
Go to Arkansas, watch the Travelers play because they don't stop beer sales in the 7th inning. What they do is beer goes on sale for half off.
Yeah.
And it's 16-ounce Fosters. At least it was in 05. So
It hadn't changed. They were my affiliate when I was there too. Same thing.
God bless them. I thought it was a joke. I
No.
thought it was a joke.
No.
No, that was very real. Very real.
Yeah, let me just add that since I sort of have the business beat at Baseball Prospectus, ad revenues, almost all of them are recognized between innings when all the commercials run. And you'll notice that that is not any place where MLB is looking to save time. Do we have other questions?
So I actually got 2 here. First one is kind of still related to the whole pitch clock stuff. And you guys touched on this a little bit, but what about, on the production side of things? This is something that people don't think about. And Dwayne Kuiper was talking about this on the radio a few weeks ago, that now the production staff, you look at replays and stuff with that pitch clock. Now you don't have time to show that. Well, you have to show it in the 2 box. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Or what about even the fan experience? Fans that now are missing more of the game in the concession stands, or better or worse, they're not even able to get back to their seats within that short amount of time. Thoughts on any of those?
Yeah, I mean, that's real and that sucks. Like straight up, right? Like what do we do about that? You have to adjust, you have to pivot. The 2 box is a phenomenal answer. That's just what we're going to have to do. There's no 2 ways about it because we're not going to sacrifice a live pitch to reiterate what you just watched and what I'm supposed to tell you colorfully in a different way. No, let's watch this
Yeah,
next pitch.
I think, and I agree with Dallas. I mean, you look at other sports we consume. So I'm a cyclist. I enjoy my golf, and I've already talked about how I love football. Right, Premier League 2 box, Tour de France, all the Grand Tours, even the Spring Classics 2 box. They don't go away from the action, but they show their ads. And then the Players Championship, I was watching it this morning before I left, 2 box. So you don't miss anything.
Regarding the concessions revenue, one of the things that we've seen recently, especially post-COVID, is a proliferation of app-based ordering at your seats. It used to be, you can only get food delivered to your seats if you were in the premier section or the boxes. And I just being in Southern California, I know the number of places you can order food from now. Petco Park, for example, has expanded. So we actually have had this conversation. This actually could present a business opportunity for app developers and food providers to enhance, food being brought to your seats, mobile ordering. And I will be curious to see if that is a side effect of this and how the food and beverage experience within a stadium changes in terms of going to a concession stand versus now it's being brought to you more frequently and with greater availability.
Tableside guac at the ballpark.
And then the other question I had is, do you guys ever think we could see a salary floor in the MLB or cap? Because you're seeing teams right now that are spending $300 and $400+ million. And then there's teams that are spending, 30, 40, 50 million.
Well,
Why is
well,
everybody
you're
looking at me? I'm not the economics guy. I mean,
we're just trying to think of a nice way of saying that.
if you blinked, you missed my career. So, I mean, as a capitalist and as a former player, I would hate to see a salary cap. That being said, seemingly by the way some of these teams are being run, it almost looks like promotion and relegation. Like it's hard for me to fathom going into the season completely knowing you have zero chance of winning. I get it. The New York market for either team, the LA market for either team is not Milwaukee. No, I have no problem with Milwaukee, but you talk about the way that revenues are generated in Major League Baseball with the RSNs, and we've seen the trouble they've been in. The smaller markets, the medium markets cannot generate that type of revenue to then put back into the teams in the form of payroll. The Tampa Bay Rays, what they have done has been completely a complete outlier, and they've been unbelievable at doing it. But many teams have tried to replicate that, and few have been able to do it. To answer your question, I'm not sure, but I do think there needs to be some type of substantive change to create a more competitive environment for more teams on a year in, year out basis.
Yeah, let me say, because again, I'm a former Wall Street guy, so let me take a much more cynical view than Bobby has. If you can't afford to be competitive at this level, sell your team, you're going to make hundreds of millions of dollars, and there's plenty of billionaires like John Middleton who are willing to spend on their teams. But that's not really a rules question. Any other
That's what I
questions
wanted to say.
before we wrap up? Go ahead.
Hello. I was curious your guys' thoughts on automatic strike zone. That seems like it's kind of the next big thing that's probably coming down the pipeline. I know it's been used in minor leagues a bit, in AAA, and then AFL. In the AFL, I thought it was a bit weird. I think they did the appeal system, which seemed a little illogical. If you're going to appeal to it as the ultimate source of truth, then shouldn't it just be used all the time? So I guess just your thoughts on that coming to MLB and what that would look like.
So don't listen to what MLB is officially saying. The ABS has not been very good they put it in the low A Southeast League, which is they changed back to the Florida State League. They had to change in the middle of the season what the strike zone was and where they were measuring where the ball crossed the play as opposed to, the front versus the middle. Anyone who's gone out to the fall league games and seen some of the pitches that are being called strikes, it's ridiculous. You have balls that are, 2 baseballs width outside, but because the slightest little inch of it is nicking one part, they're calling it a strike. Realistically, based on but from a visual perspective, it's kind of creating a lot of issues. So based on the feedback players are giving, based on what managers and front office officials are seeing, the challenge system is significantly more likely to be what comes to MLB than a fully automated strike zone where every single pitch is being called by robo-umps or the system. Or it has not been very effective. They have not found, again, they're changing shape of the strike zone, adding high, low, side to side. Where's the ball being measured? It's been very messy and no one's really happy with it. So I think the challenge system is what we will see, where the umpire's still calling, 99% of the balls and strikes, and the couple calls per game that get challenged. That's what we're going to see in ABS used.
I think that from a player's perspective, the umpires get a boatload of grief. They're not that bad. They're really not. And I'm not being funny. That's not being facetious. They're actually, most of those guys are pretty good. You're going to have the call here or there. You're going to have the call. You're going to have the guy who has a bad one. He has a bad night. Guess what? We have bad nights too. It happens in the course of 162, where you've got 0 for 3, and those two numbers in the error column are both yours. Those happen, right? So I would be much more in favor of the challenge system as was defined. Definitely think that's the way to go. Hey, listen, boom, that ball's down. Hey, Skip, have a look at that. I'm good with that. Fully automatic ball and strike because of just the egregious nature of some of the horrible calls. I'm not on that. I'm not on that at all.
Yeah, I don't know why our sport seemingly is in a race to eradicate the human element around every corner. We're doing our very best to get rid of what has made this game so beautiful, right? I mean, remember when we talked about managers not being able to go out there and wear out the umpire, right? And you go on YouTube and you can go down a rabbit hole of watching Earl Weaver just crushing people and Tony Lasorda just hammering people like that's a Friday night for me. So that hurts. It hurts to watch that happen. But again, there's an understanding of why. I just I'm not a huge fan of it. Not a huge fan of it. I love our game. I love the fact that, and one thing that I've always thought was tired about the automatic system, and you said it, and I'll add, I don't know who it was in the stands said exactly what I said. I mouthed it. Well, it's a strike. And the response is a terrible one. Yeah, but it doesn't look good. But I'm supposed to throw it over the plate? Yeah. Did it go over the plate? Yeah, but okay, well, you tell me where I went wrong here, because I threw it over the plate and it's a strike, but it didn't look good.
Throw it over the white part.
So that there's a black part on it for a reason. And that's why I've never been able to just get on board with it. And it ultimately, for me, it's a coming to terms with the game you love and the fact that there's humans involved with this, and someone's going to screw it up. We're just all crossing our fingers, hoping it doesn't happen in the bottom of the ninth, bags juice with 2 outs.
It's true. Very true.
All right. I hope that everybody here has enjoyed this as much as I have. This has been really informative, really entertaining. Dallas, Kyle, and Bobby, I couldn't think of a better panel. Thank you very much. And we'll see you all for drinks.
Hey,